Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode from the Ciera Teaching Channel. I'm super excited about tonight's topic. We're going to be talking about the dreaded text evidence. I have 5 quick and actionable strategies that are going to help you teach text evidence and for students to understand text evidence a lot better. Number 1, create a question. So a lot of the times students don't understand how text evidence and questions are related. They don't understand or see the connection between them. So what do we do there? Well, instead of starting with the question and then the answer, we're going to reverse it. We're going to start with the answer and create a question. So students are going to see that relationship a lot clearer than they did before. So an easy way to do this is before you copy any pages or passages, pre-underline any type of evidence that you think is significant enough for there to be a question over. And then you're going to have your students go back and they are going to find a sentence or multiple sentences that you have underlined, read them and think of what is a question that I could ask where this would be the answer. This would be the text evidence that I would need to provide to show support in the answer. Another thing you can do too is not pre-underline anything in the passage, but let your students underline things. What do they think is significant enough in the text to be worthy of a question? So this is a great way to see, are they determining what is truly important in the text itself? So they go through and underline, maybe you say 3, I want you to find 3 areas, underline those 3 sentences or multiple sentences. Sometimes it's, more than one. And then you're going to have them create the questions that go along with those examples of text evidence. Then you can even go as far as having them write it out in a question answer form. All right, so now we're going to write in your question. And now that you know this is the text evidence, let's practice putting it into a strong answer. And then talk about the relationship between them. How do we know that this text evidence is supporting the answer to this question? Why are those two things connected and related? And the students, again, they're going to see it a lot clearer because they're doing it in reverse. They're kind of coming from it from behind, or actually coming from the very front, if you really think about it, because they're the ones creating the questions. So it's a great strategy and one that students actually find very engaging because they like being the teacher. They like creating the questions. All right, strategy number 2 tonight is called match the word. This one is a very simple strategy, but it's something very simple that we can tell our students to do when finding text evidence. Match the word. So I tell them to pick out the most important word in the question. And typically I try to get them to steer clear from repetitive words. So for example, characters' names, other like pet names, things like that. Any other word that is repeated a lot throughout the story, those are not the most important word because those are going to be found everywhere, right? So we want them to find the most important word in the question that's not a repetitive word. They're going to circle that word and then they're going to go find that word in the text. So maybe they found it once and that's where they find the answer in text evidence. Maybe they find it twice and they have to determine which one, if not maybe both, could be the text evidence. So this is a very concrete way of making sure that they are going back and they know what to look for. A lot of times the problem is students don't know what to look for. So they're reading this question, they know the answer, but they're not sure where to look for the evidence or what exact sentence should they pull. So using the match the word strategy helps them give them a more concrete idea of what exactly to look for and to use when they're writing out their answers. All right, strategy number 3 for text evidence is pre-underline your evidence. So this would be before you make copies of any kind of passages that you're using, you will actually look at the questions that are being asked and you will go and pre-underline the evidence, all the evidence for those questions. So this works best if there are at least 5 questions being asked about the text. So what you'll do then is you will present the passage and the questions to your students. Clearly, there's a lot underlined. So when they get to the point where they're ready to answer the questions, they will read question 1. They will start to answer question 1, and then they're going to go back and look for text evidence, but they're only going to look at the underlying sentences. Now you're probably thinking, well, Ciera, you're kind of giving them the answer. No, not necessarily. I am narrowing down where they need to look, but they still have to analyze all the sentences that are underlined and figure out which one supports the question being asked. So they're still doing the whole process of analyzing the text to find text evidence. They're just doing it on a much narrower basis as far as how many sentences they have to go back and analyze. A little twist you can do for this one is if there are 5 questions, maybe you put 6 things underlined. So there's going to be one that's not needed. So you can kind of give them a little challenge that there's going to be one sentence or paragraph or whatever in there that we're not going to need at all, that does not go along with any of the questions being asked. So then they can figure out which sentence is that, and maybe again, can they create a question for the leftover piece of evidence? So great idea. Again, this is a great strategy too. Anytime you're working with students who have IEPs or learning difficulties, pre-underlining evidence is a fantastic strategy to help the students, again, narrow down on kind of what they're looking at, but still have to do the whole analyzing process as far as their thinking goes. All right. Number 4, we're ready for strategy number 4 for helping with text evidence, and that is to create 2-word summaries. So this one's fun, and I love when I see my students actually do this when they're taking standardized tests. What you're going to do is when they are presented with a text that has multiple paragraphs, after they read paragraph number 1 out to the side, either right or left, they're going to write 2 words that summarizes as best as possible what that paragraph was about. Now, clearly it's not going to be a true summary because it's not complete sentences, and those 2 words may make sense together, sometimes they may not. But I basically want them to pick out 2 words that really represents that paragraph. So maybe it's a character's name and the word backpack because something happened with the backpack. And then maybe the next paragraph is the character's name with the word school because they were at school and blah, 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 blah. So then what they're going to do is when they're answering questions, they can use their 2-word summaries to help figure out where the text evidence would be. So if there's a question, blah, 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 backpack, woo, I use that word in my 2-word summary. That's going to be up here in the first paragraph. So then they can go and reread the first paragraph, find their text evidence, and use it in their answer. So it's a great way to allow them to kind of figure out where the text evidence is by using this strategy. So the last strategy today, number 5, is called evidence versus my thoughts. I know one of the biggest issues that students have when working with text evidence is that a lot of times they like to put their own thinking down as text evidence. And so as much as I say it to them, this is not evidence, this is not evidence, sometimes they don't understand that evidence has to come clearly from the text, right? So doing an activity to help them almost sort these 2 pieces based on one text, it can be really important for students who need that concrete understanding. So all you would have to do for this one is whatever text you're using, you would pre-create, so before the lesson, either index cards, or you could even type it and cut out cards, whatever's easiest. And you would have certain cards that have text evidence, and then certain cards that have what would be thoughts from your mind, right? And then each one of those would be paired to a question. So it would be question, evidence, and my thoughts. So then what we would do is after we read the passage together, then we're going to look at the question and we're going to figure out which card would be the text evidence, which card would be the my thoughts, and understand how the two are different. And then we would just repeat that for all of the different questions that we're focusing on in that passage. If you have any text evidence questions, feel free to drop them below. I'll be happy to absolutely help you. But I hope these are easy for you to implement, that your students catch on to them very quickly, and that gives you some new ideas to try when you're battling the beast that is text evidence. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you got some great ideas tonight, and I really appreciate you joining, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.